So without further ado, let's kick this off by introducing our first writer. The first writer we have for you tonight is Ellen Jo Ljung. She spent nearly 4 decades teaching and learning from her students as an English and reading teacher in middle and high schools. She's the author of 2 textbooks on teaching writing with computers and more than 24 articles. She is currently writing a novel about a teacher chafing under micromanagement in Texas. I can't picture it as a fellow educator. When she isn't busy reading and writing in her home office, and this is where she makes me really tired, she and her husband of 54 years create art glass sold in galleries and travel the world by kayak. She is also a court-appointed special advocate / guardian ad litem for children in foster care and a political activist. This summer she will be teaching a creative writing camp here for teens and tweens. You can read her blog at www.imwriter, that's the letter I, writer.com, and reach her at imwriter@imwriter.com. So please welcome Ellen to the mic.
Thanks, Eric. And I have bookmarks with information on the camp. Even if you don't have kids who are 13 to 18, if you know anybody, we're going to have so much fun. I just want to tell you, this is a more serious piece, but the camp, I promise, is going to be lighthearted playing with words. So this is from my teaching memoir, Cavalier Comments. I'm too glib. I talk too easily. Cavalier about the consequences of my comments. In my quest to connect with students, I trust my intuition. It never occurred to me to consider potential repercussions, either good or bad. A student taught me that lesson, but not until I'd already taught for 12 years. A vivacious strawberry blonde in one of my sections of freshman honors English in 1986, Cindy participated actively in class. While many of her peers found Romeo and Juliet's haste bewildering, she got it. She read the part of the nurse with great attitude, and she picked up on Dickens' use of names as symbols and great expectations. I felt lucky to have her in class. Partway through the year, Cindy developed serious swelling and pain in her joints. Fatigue slowed her down, but her smile never wavered. When doctors finally diagnosed her with lupus, she seemed to accept steroid medication without a whimper. I'm sure she didn't like the moon-shaped face it gave her, but she maintained her slim figure through vigilance and determination. I worried about Cindy and tried to offer support and encouragement. As a senior, 3 years later, she appeared in my creative writing class, looking far healthier, her coloring better, her face less round, her participation more frequent. Her writing charmed me. By then, Page to Stage, our student performance of student writing for the school and community, was just 2 years old. Theater and debate students joined authors for works with multiple voices. Cindy read her poignant story of one woman's betrayal, The Wishing Chair, and this is her writing. The rhythm of the wooden chair wails in a flawless tempo. Daniela mastered the art of rocking long ago. The sun frames her body on the old veranda as she stares at the note intently. She listens to the squeak of the chair, silently waiting. Just an excerpt. Cindy and a classmate authored a second piece, a clever satire about an organization for the treatment of immature males. She also wrote a short play that provided the memorable hit of the 1990 performance. Entitled The Lesson and set in a local grade school, it tells the following story. It's a very snowy day before Christmas break at Glenview Grade School in the 3rd grade accelerated class. Or should we say the 4 children who showed up for class are ready for the holidays, except for Josephine. You see, Jo would like to stay in school so she can continue playing tricks on her classmates, making up incredible stories and making her teacher angry. But by the end of the day, Jo finds a new way to get attention after her schoolmates teach her a lesson. Cindy's characters, a somewhat pompous teacher, Prissy Louise, Crybaby Bobby, and Zach, whose latest fetish is scuba diving, got back at her for tricks. The audience howled at their antics, and reading her work felt like a privilege. One day that spring, I ran into Cindy in the carpeted hallway outside the main conference room after school. We sat together on the recircled church pew as she fixed her gaze on mine. "You know, Mrs. Young," she declared, "you said something to me freshman year that was the most important thing anyone ever told me." Baffled, I struggled to hide my confusion. "I did? What was that?" "You told me about a student you knew who'd had a really severe case of lupus when your son was at Montessori. Then you saw her years later at Batavia High School when she was a healthy student and you were teaching there." "Oh, that's true," I stammered. It was indeed true, though I had no recollection of the conversation. 17 years earlier, our older son's Montessori teacher and her husband had transferred their home into an allergen-proof bubble because their daughter Lisa's disease seemed uncontrollable. When we returned to Illinois after our 5 years in Connecticut, I ran into Lisa when I was teaching at Batavia. No longer the wan, weak girl I had once known, she was then a thriving senior. I realized that I must have told Cindy that story. How else would she have known? My failure to recollect that conversation, to connect with it, intimidated me. Like most teachers I know, I'd collected quotations like figure skater Scott Hamilton's, quote, "I don't think most teachers realize how much impact they have," unquote. I'd seen the posters quoting Henry Brooks Adams, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where the influence stops." But I'd never really considered them seriously. Relief that this casual sharing of a story had been helpful made me wonder, how many stories and statements hadn't helped students? Cavalier comments carried risks that I'd never considered. I resolved to be more thoughtful about what I said, but frequently intuition and instinct took over and I spoke without thinking. I hope my instincts didn't fail me too often. 28 years later, I revisited this conversation in a Facebook message dialogue with Cindy. Sending this piece in draft form to her, I shared my concern that it didn't have enough conflict to engage the reader, despite the power it had held for me. Her response caught me totally by surprise. "Okay, so the truth is there is a bigger story here, and it probably is more compelling. After my diagnosis, I felt like my life fell apart. Not in that teenage drama way, but for real. Doctors told me I might not live to see 30. Having children was now out of the question. My parents went off the deep end. Every move I made was under scrutiny. Already self-conscious, medications made my face blow up, and classmates said I resembled a Cabbage Patch doll. I was mortified. And I felt like crap. It was hard to concentrate at school. I withdrew, and my teenage angst turned into full-blown depression. I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, life sucked, and from what I was hearing from the adults around me, it wasn't going to get any better. So I sat on the edge of the tub and thought about the least gruesome way to extinguish myself. I didn't have the guts, thankfully. I trudged off to school the next day, broken. And it was that next day, or very soon after, you said the only positive thing I'd heard since my diagnosis. "Hey, this other kid I taught had lupus and she's doing great." Wait, what? And what made it extra special is, you weren't trying to reach me. It wasn't a prepared speech. It was a genuine, simple, offhanded remark that in 12 seconds or less changed my entire outlook on life and gave me something to live for. It sounds so trite, but it literally was a pivotal moment for me. Reading Cindy's email response overwhelmed me. At the time, I hadn't seen through her mask. I'd had no idea how hard things were. I just bumbled my way into making a difference without even knowing it. When I wrote her that, she assured me, "I think somewhere deep down you knew it would mean something to me. You don't strike me as an offhanded kind of lady." As always, Cindy made me smile. I hope I lived up to her perception of me with the students who followed her.